Hi there, this video is just a recording to respond to questions that people asked about research in the Week 6 Writer's Toolbox reflection. And folks had a lot of good things to say about their experiences with research, where they learned things, commented on experiences or understanding of plagiarism, and overall seemed to have a pretty good grasp of what needed to be done, or had gotten some good tips or pointers from the Purdue OWL, which I have displayed here on the computer, or in the book itself on quoting and summarizing things. And I think both are really great resources for the how you're working and integrating your sources into your paper. I think that the thing to always remember is that when you are integrating research into your paper, it's being done to increase your credibility, so that you can better make your case and support your claims with evidence. And that's what citing sources is all about, is really establishing a stronger argument, convincing people that your viewpoint is valid and that you have something worth listening to and saying. I just have a couple questions that people ask that I'm going to respond to and make sure that I've covered those bases and that you've got the information you need and you've all heard the same thing. And one of them was about actually properly citing and quoting a statistic, and whether you would have to quote it when you included it, so word for word, put it in quotes, or whether you can just cite it. And I think that the thing to remember is that you're always citing your information by providing the parenthetical citation, but even more importantly, in the text of your writing, you're explaining where it came from. So if I have information from the National Banana Association telling everybody that they should eat at least one banana per day, and that 4 out of 7 people who eat one banana a day are healthier people, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to quote it exactly word for word in the way that the National Banana Association told me about the thing. But what I am going to do is I have a parenthetical citation for that. The only reason you would actually quote something in that case would be if the person from the National Banana Association perhaps had an opinion that they, in my opinion, bananas are the most delicious of all fruits available, said National Banana Association Director Marianne Stoneberg. Okay, I'm obviously making all this up right now. So, which is not what you're doing for your paper, but just to give you an example. So you quote things when people express their opinions or original ideas or say things in such a way that you think that paraphrasing them or summarizing them will not be as strong. It also provides us with the voice of other people in your paper, that we're hearing from them and not just from you. So the information, if it's statistical, I would suggest that it will just be cited with your parenthetical citation where it came from, but that you still should remember that in the text of your paper, you're actually going to tell us who it came from. Don't just say, 4 out of 7 people eat a banana every day, and then put in quotation or parentheses your parenthetical citation and expect that that's enough. In the text of your paper, tell us who said that. That's where you're establishing the credibility of things by telling us that the National Banana Association reports this, or the Food and Drug Administration, or the American Medical Association, right? Providing this in the text, because technically people can go ahead and they can look at your works cited page and find out where that came from, but the likelihood of them doing so is pretty small. And so you want to increase your credibility by providing us those resources in order to give us that information. Another question asked was about paraphrasing in essays and where you should put citations, parenthetical citations in those cases. Should you put it after every fact that you state? I think that the first time when you specifically identify, according to the National Banana Association director, and then you have some information you've summarized, people should eat a lot of bananas because it's really good for your health, and that's essentially what she said. You're not quoting her or the organization, but the first time that you actually specifically state that you're taking something from somewhere, you should use a parenthetical citation at the end of that sentence. And then as long as it's clear that you're continuing, furthermore, she established that you wouldn't need to continue citing after every sentence. I would suggest that, again, if you have a very specific statistic that you use from it, that you would cite that again. Because maybe it's on a different, if it were a printed document, it might be on a different page than the original one. But you don't need to put it at the end of every sentence. You're going to put it when you first introduce the subject, and then maybe once again for a very specific or pertinent piece of information in order to establish the direct link. Otherwise, it's fine as long as you're making it clear that you're referencing that source, that you don't have a citation in every single sentence. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies. It's a little bit of artwork too, citing. It's not necessarily all technical or spelled out sometimes. So you want to do so in a way that attributes your information to the sources, but in a non-intrusive way. You don't want the reader to always be stumbling over citation, 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 citation. Okay, it can get disruptive if done too much. The person asked for quotations. Do I have to always include a citation at the end of the sentence the quote was placed in? Or should you finish after you've talked about the author's work? It's sort of the same thing with that first question. If you have a direct quote, you're always going to cite that sentence. Okay, that quotation needs to be attributed directly to that. And then as you continue to talk about the person's work, as long as it's clear that you're doing so, you won't need to cite it again and again. You don't have to wait to the end. But whenever you have a quotation, you definitely want to use a citation for that piece. And then use your discretion to perhaps indicate another citation later on. But again, not for every single sentence is it necessary, as long as it's clear that you're still continuing to discuss the same source. The question is about research papers and putting that they always had heard that you put the publication date in the citation or the author's name. The OWL stipulates in the MLA, and this is the difference, APA is the author's last name and the year of publication. In MLA, a typical citation is the author's last name and the page number you found something on. Of course, that gets into a little bit tricky. I'm going to pull up here in-text citations, the basics, and that's where it tells you when you're doing the author and the page, you're usually going to include the author and the page number, but if you state the author's last name in the same sentence, see they're giving you an example here, Wordsworth stated, and so only the number is given. In this case, they've only said romantic poetry, and then so they've included the author's last name and the page number. And so this is sort of your author's last name and the page number always has to show up. If you don't know the name of the author, then you'll always begin with the first word of the first words of the actual citation for your MLA Works Cited page. Okay, because it's a cross-referencing system. So if this right here, what they're showing you, the impact of global warming in North America, that's going to be the first listing on your Works Cited page. And if you think about your Works Cited page, you are putting everything in alphabetical order. If there's the author's last name, that's what starts the entry. If there is no author, it's the title of the article that starts it. So it's those first words, the author's last name or the first words of the work cited, that are going into that citation. So that if I look at that citation, I can just go easily to your alphabetical listing on your Works Cited page, and I can find that entry very simply. So that's the way to think about what you're going to include in there. If there, of course, is, I'm trying to see if they have that indicated here, non-print sources from the internet. And then in that case, you're going to include the author's last name, but you don't have to give paragraph or page numbers, depending on what it is. And so you're only going to be able to give what it is. You just do your best effort to provide the information the reader needs to be able to find that. Okay, so it's sort of a nebulous thing in that case, but this strict original idea is the author and the page number, and then you have to adapt that based on what's actually available to you. If there's no author, you go with the title of the article. If there's no page number, you don't include it. Okay, so you'll just have to use logic in order to provide what's needed. But this was actually on the OWL. It's the listing under here on the left that says MLA in-text citations, the basics. Okay, so this is a good go-to place if you're having a hard time figuring out exactly what you need for a given circumstance. Another question about the formatting of quotations was for long quotes. And the standard quote just gets integrated into the paragraph as usual. And as a matter of course, that would mean if you have something that's 4 lines or less. If you have a quotation that's going to take up more than 4 lines, you have different options. One is you could break it up and sort of quote the really important parts and summarize others, and that way you could just integrate it into your paragraph as usual. Or if you have a really long quotation that you think is important to do, you're going to follow the example here on this page for long quotations. And essentially what it is that you're going to indent the entire quote 2 full tabs from the left-hand margin. The right-hand margin remains the same. It's still double-spaced. Nothing else is different. And then the citation goes at the end. The next line here, they don't show it. You would actually start your next line of the paragraph at the margin again. You can see some examples of this. I think it helps to, I wanted to look at an MLA sample paper. And you can actually look at, it's a PDF when they give it to you. And you can look at one that's marked up here. And I think that it helps to see things in context. And they usually have a long quote and quoted in. Okay, so here you go. They've broken it up onto 2 pages, so it's a little bit, both of them are that are in here. But you can see that the author actually ended the sentence here with a colon. You're always going to do that for a long quote. You have this all indented, and then you continue the paragraph on the next line. So the resources again on the Purdue OWL is the MLA sample paper. Can show you exactly how it looks. I also think it's really helpful to look at an MLA works cited page. This is what your works cited should look like at the end of your paper. It's double spaced. It's alphabetized by this first word here. You'll see that the first line is at the margin and all the rest are indented. Okay, so this Purdue OWL is a really helpful resource. I can't tell you enough how much I would encourage you to use it when you have questions about that. And if you're not sure exactly where to find something under what category, you can always email me with a question about that. The final question that was asked was about submitting portfolios at the end of the semester and if you have to run them through a plagiarism detection site. Some of you have had to do this with other things like at turnitin.com in high school, and no, I don't require that. Because I see your paper progress through a series of proposals and outlines and early drafts and later drafts, I feel pretty confident, and I've been teaching for 25 years, that I have experience in detecting plagiarism. When I see things, I also get familiar with your writing, and being a writing instructor and an avid reader, I often, when I encounter plagiarism, it's clear that they're not quite your words, and that's what causes me to search for something, and I can detect plagiarism that way. Sometimes I just plug things into those systems myself if I have questions about it, because the quality of your work seems different. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes your work is better than what you've submitted as somebody else's, or sometimes the reverse, and so I don't require, though, a plagiarism detector. Okay. Those were all the questions that people had in this. If you have further questions about researching or integrating research into your paper at any time, please be sure to ask me, and I'm happy to answer. And thanks for watching this video, and continue researching, learn new things, and share them with all of us. Thanks, and have a great week.